Void Miner, Seed of Change, Part 5, Chapter 20, Return to the Light. The air that met them was thin and cold, but alive. Kaelric stood at the tunnel mouth, his lungs burning as he drew the first breath of true morning. The wind tasted different, crisp, laced with metal and rain, and something electric beneath it, a faint hum he could feel more than hear. Behind him, Risa crawled out on hands and knees, coughing. "Stone in flame! I thought we'd never see the sky again." Her voice broke the silence, and even the echo sounded strange, lighter somehow, as if the mountain itself had changed the way it carried sound. Tovin climbed up next, blinking against the sun's glare. His pale eyes shimmered in the dawn. "It's clearer than it should be. The air purified." He tilted his head back, listening to the wind. "The harmonics are still resonant. The mountain is singing." Grask hauled himself out with a grunt. Crix perched on his shoulder, both blinking against the light. The goblin squinted, hissed softly, and then broke into a wide grin. "Sky not dead," he chirped. "Big bright, no fall." Kaelric couldn't help but laugh, exhaustion making the sound raw. "No, Crix, not dead." He glanced up toward the rising light, its light scattering through a thin veil of Arkyn mist that hung over peaks. Where sunlight struck that mist, it refracted into subtle ribbons of blue, gold, and green, like veins of the Heartforge itself had climbed into the sky. They stood in silence for a long while. Even Risa, ever the pragmatist, seemed caught by the sight. Every ridge of the Greyspines pulsed faintly, not in chaos or fire, but in rhythm. Arkyn veins traced through the cliffs in threads of light, connecting one peak to another. Far below, rivers gleamed as though lined with silver, and a faint warmth came through the wind, carrying with it the scent of thawing earth. Tovin's voice was quiet. "The world remembers what it was meant to be." Risa crossed her arms, still staring down at the valley. "If you told me a forge could wake a world, I'd have called you mad. Yet here we stand." She tapped her boot against the rock beneath him. "The stone's humming, lad. Not like a tremor. More like a song." Kaelric knelt, pressed a hand to the ground. The vibration under his palm was steady, constant, a low pulse that matched the beat in his chest. The Heartforge's rhythm hadn't stopped. It had simply settled into the bones of the world. He closed his eyes, listening. The sound was everywhere now, even in the wind, even in the space between heartbeats. "It's alive," he said quietly. "The mountain, the whole world." Tovin nodded slowly. "Then the legends weren't metaphor. The flame that breathes, the stone that remembers. This is what they meant." The sun cleared the highest peak, light spilling across their faces, warm and sharp, catching in Risa's braid, in Tovin's pale hair, in Grask's scars. For the first time since they had entered the mountains, Kaelric saw them clearly in daylight, no longer divided by race or language, but by shared exhaustion and awe. Grask grunted, squinting toward the horizon. "Fire sky new, ground strong again." Risa smiled faintly. "Aye, big one. Stronger than it's been in an age." Crix stretched his arm wide and skittered in delight. "Skyborn make world sing." Kaelric laughed softly, but something in his chest tightened. He turned, looking back into the dark mouth of the tunnel they had left behind. From deep within came a single low pulse of light, faint, distant, but steady. The Heartforge's heartbeat echoing farewell. He whispered, "Thank you." They made camp not far from the ridge that evening, on a plateau overlooking the valley. The sky glowed in bands of violet and gold as Arkyn dust caught the last light of day. Risa had built a small fire from dry alpine wood. Though it seemed unnecessary, The ground itself radiated warmth. Grask had found a stream nearby, its water glowing faintly blue under the starlight. He brought a skin of it back and handed it to Kaelric. "Drink. World's blood clean now." Kaelric took it, hesitating. The liquid shimmered faintly. "It's safe?" Grask gave a sharp nod. "Stone drink it too." He pointed to a patch of moss by the fire. Its color had deepened to rich green since they'd lit the flames. Tovin studied the water with fascination. "Residual Arkyn trace stable. It's purifying the soil and air. This will change everything." Risa sat down heavily, her hammer laid across her lap. "Aye, it already has." She stared into the flame for a moment, then looked at Kaelric. "You know, lad, I'm not much for speeches. Stone folks say what needs saying once and never twice." Kaelric met her gaze, uncertain. "Go on." She picked up her hammer, running her calloused thumb along the edge. "Without ye, we'd be buried back there. You heard the mountain when none of us could. You let us through, and you didn't break once." She held the hammer out horizontally, the dwarven gesture of oath. "So I'll say it plain. I owe you me life, Skyborn. From this day until stone forgets the sound of your flame, my strength's yours." Kaelric blinked, unsure how to respond. Risa's tone carried no ceremony, only truth. He reached out, resting his palm against the hammer's head. The metal hummed faintly where his fingers touched. "I'll never ask you to follow," he said softly, "only to walk beside me." Risa smiled. "Then that's what I'll do." Tobin inclined his head, voice gentle. "Then I will speak mine as well. By Astra's breath and the harmony of the deep, I stand beside the Skyborn." Grask's deep voice rumbled after a long pause. "Clan follows strength that keeps fire earth living. You keep fire calm. Clan follow." Crix chirped, tapping his chest profoundly. "Where Skyborn walk, we fix." Laughter broke the solemn air, light and clean. Kaelric felt the aura stir again, soft, harmonic. Their voices, though from different tongues, wove together in resonance. Every vowel spoken carried meaning in every ear, each hearing the words in their own language, but feeling the same truth. The night deepened. Stars burned brighter than Kaelric had ever seen. The air was still, but beneath the quiet he could feel the steady hum of the Heartforge's pulse in the earth, in his bones, in the distant sky. Even the Dust Widow, far away beyond the mountains, answered faintly, a whisper of its engines flickering to life in rhythm with that beat. Kaelric smiled faintly to himself. "Hold on, old ship," he murmured. "We're coming home." By morning, the wind had changed. The night's chill had faded to a strange, even warmth that rose from the soil itself. Mist drifted low through the valley, glowing faintly where it passed over Arkyn veins in the stone. Kaelric woke before the others, his back against the mountain slope. The fire had long gone to embers, but the warmth remained, steady as a heartbeat beneath the ground. He sat there for a while, just listening. The world was not quiet. It hummed. Not loud, not constant. A faint undertone that matched the rhythm of his pulse. Birdsong carried it, the rustle of grass bent to it. Even the wind found a melody in its passage. He thought of what Tovin had said. The mountain is singing. And realized it wasn't just the mountain. The world had a voice again. Risa stirred beside the fire, muttering as she sat up. "Stone preserve me. I ache in places I didn't know I had." She caught him staring at the light spreading over the ridge. "You've been up long, haven't you?" "Since dawn," he admitted. She rose and joined him, hammer resting on her shoulder. Together they watched the mists part below, revealing the valley stretching southward. It looked nothing like the land they'd entered. Where there had been frost and ruin, now faint colors spread like veins of spring. The river below glittered with pale blue light, winding through silvered grass. Even the scars on the mountain slopes had softened, filled with new green growth. Risa let out a low whistle. That's something. Never thought I'd see the Greyspines bloom. Kaelric smiled faintly. Neither did I. By the time Tovin woke, the light had risen high enough to pierce the Arkyn mist, scattering it into slow-moving ribbons that caught on the wind like banners. He stepped to the ridge and took in the horizon with wide eyes. It's alive. All of it. The forests, the streams, even the air. It's all synchronized. Risa grinned. You talk like a scholar elf, but I see what you mean. Grask was next to rise, his movement stirring Cricks from sleep. The goblin yawned, blinked at the sight below, then cackled in delight. Shin brighty dark, skyborn fix world. Risa laughed. Aye, that he did. Don't let it get to your head, lad. Kaelric only smiled. We didn't fix it, we just reminded it how to breathe. They broke camp as the light strengthened. The trail downward wound through uneven ridges where broken stones still smoked faintly from the forge's awakening. Every so often, they passed shards of crystal embedded in the soil, remnants of the Heartforge's surge. Each shard glowed faintly when Kaelric passed, dimming after he stepped beyond. Tovin noticed it first. They react to you, he said. Kaelric looked down. I think it's the same pulse. It's in everything now. Risa kicked at a shard with her boot, watching it flare. So the world knows you then. Great. Now you've gone and made yourself part of the song. He chuckled. Maybe just one note. By midday, they'd reached the lower slopes where the Greyspines fell away into wide meadow. Here the transformation was even more striking. Rivers had changed course overnight, carving new paths that gleamed under the sun. Trees bore strange luminescent buds, and small creatures darted through the glass, leaving trails of light with their movement. Tovin knelt, touching the soil. This shouldn't be possible. The Heartforge's influence was confined to the forges. And for it to reach this far, Risa cut him off gently. Aye, but it did. Best not question the gift, elf. Just enjoy breathing clean air again. Kaelric said nothing. His attention had drifted downward, toward something deeper than the landscape itself. He could feel a rhythm under his feet. Faint, but distinct. Not the world's heartbeat this time, but a second echo, mechanical, steady, familiar. He stopped walking. Risa turned back. What is it? He closed his eyes. The sound was faint, but clear in his mind. A pulse, metallic yet alive, syncing perfectly with the one in his chest. The widow, he whispered. She's awake. Tovin frowned. You're certain? Kaelric nodded slowly. I can feel her, like she's calling through the stone. Risa smiled faintly. Then it sees we've more than one world to thank you for waking. They rested that evening at the edge of the meadows, the peaks towering behind them now, glowing faintly under the stars. The river murmured nearby, its surface shining with reflected constellations. Grask sat apart, sharpening his blade in silence. Cricks hummed to himself, plucking at bits of wire he'd salvaged, shaping them into small charms. Risa worked her hammer over the fire, polishing away the grime of the tunnels. Tovin was sketching something in the dirt. The mountain's veins, the path of Arkyn light across the land. Kaelric stood a little apart, watching the horizon. Down there, beyond the river and the low hills, faint lights flickered in the valley. Stonebrook. He could almost see the Forgefires, the smoke trails, the life he'd left behind. He exhaled slowly. "Home," he said under his breath. Risa looked up from her work. "Aye, lad, the road's still long, but we'll get there." He nodded, then turned his gaze back toward the mountains. From the Greyspines came a low, steady tremor, soft, peaceful, like the sigh of something vast and content. The Heartforge's final pulse. Tovin came to stand beside him. "You can feel it too?" "Yes." "The world isn't the same, Kaelric. None of us are." Kaelric smiled faintly. "Good. Maybe it's time for something new." The elf studied him a long moment. "Do you think they'll understand? The ones in the valley?" Kaelric's expression softened. "They don't have to. The mountain understands for them." Risa called from the fire, her voice carrying warmth. "You can philosophize after we're fed, lads. Come sit before I eat your share." Kaelric laughed and joined them. Later, when the others had fallen asleep, he sat alone, staring up at the stars. The night was utterly clear. No haze, no storm. Only light and endless depth. Somewhere beyond those stars, far beyond the reach of his world, he knew another sky waited, the one his parents had come from. He rested a hand on the hammer. It was still warm, still pulsing softly as though listening. "Still with me?" he whispered. The hammer vibrated faintly, one pulse in answer. He smiled. "Then let's find the way home." At dawn, they began their descent. The path wound gently now, soft underfoot, framed by flowering grass and luminous stones. The wind carried birdsong and the faint scent of resin from the forest ahead. Behind them, the mountains glowed in the morning light, ridges alive, valleys breathing, rivers glittering like veins of crystal. Before them, the faint smoke of Stonebrook rose against the horizon. 5 travelers, elf, dwarf, orc, goblin, and the skyborn boy who had woken the world, walked down into the valley. Each step echoed the same pulse, the same rhythm that now bound stone and flame, sky and forge, one to another. The hum started like a memory. Ark didn't hear it so much as feel it, the faint rhythmic vibration beneath the hangar deck. For a heartbeat, he thought it was only his imagination, the old habit of expecting motion from a ship long dead. But then the floor plates trembled again, steady, pulsing. He froze, one hand still gripping the torch he'd been using to weld a brace along the Widow's starboard strut. The light flickered, the blue arc cut out. In the silence that followed, he heard it clearly. A hum, deep, resonant, mechanical, building in waves through the hull. Ark straightened slowly, face lit by the soft glow that began to trace the seams of the Widow's plating. Lines of light ran like veins across the metal, converging toward the reactor chamber. He whispered, "No." But his voice carried no fear, only disbelief. Across the bay, the diagnostic array flickered alive for the first time in 15 years. Screens that had been dark since the crash began lighting in succession. Rows of pale blue glyphs scrolling upward. Power indicators blinked green. Environmental control hummed. Containment relays cycled with a low, smooth tone. Ark stepped forward, boots echoing against the deck. He reached the central console and stared as the Widow's emblem, the crescent gear, brightened on the display. He laughed once, rough and startled. "You stubborn old thing." Behind him, a voice called from the catwalk. "Ark?" Kara's footsteps were light but quick, her tone sharp with confusion. She wore her work apron, still streaked with the morning's forged dust, hair tied back with a strip of linen. He turned toward her and saw the light reflected in her eyes. The entire hangar was glowing. Faint blue illumination spread outward from the widow's core, filling every crack and rivet, shimmering like liquid fire through the metal veins. Kara stopped halfway down the stairs, eyes wide. "What did you do?"
"Nothing,"
Ark said quietly.
"It's doing it on its own."
She descended the rest of the way, hand trailing along the railing. Sparks of light followed her touch. "I felt it," she said. "Half an hour ago, every crystal in the healer's word flared at once. The children said the air sang." Ark glanced toward the core chamber.
"It's not just the ship. It's the Arkyn outside, too. Every vein in the valley's lit up."
"Then it's him." He looked back at her. Kara's expression was calm, but her voice trembled at the edges. "You know it is. Nothing else could reach this deep." Ark exhaled, rubbing a hand over his beard.
15 years of silence, and he decides today's the day to start a conversation.
A soft tone chimed from the console. The screen brightened further, text scrolling, system initialization. Then, from the ship's intercom, came a voice. "Diagnostic complete," it said, dry as ever. 78% of systems operational, and, oh, hello, Ark. You're looking younger for being 75. Ark's grin broke before he could stop it.
"Iona?"
"Last time I checked," the AI replied. "Oh, someone apparently powered me down for a decade and a half. Any particular reason, or just forgetfulness brought on by old age?" Kara covered her mouth, half laughing, half crying. "She still sounds smug." Ark leaned on the console.
"Iona, what's your power source?"
"Arkyn synchronization detected," Iona said. "Planetary resonance coupling at subcore frequencies. External origin? Unknown. Internal readings? Compatible signature. Arston genetic markers confirmed." Kara's smile faded. "Genetic markers?" Iona continued, oblivious to the tone. "Conclusion? Signal transmitted via Arkyn lattice network. Probability of originating from biological source sharing Arston lineage, 99.7%.
Ark whispered, "Kaelric."
The hum deepened, a low, living heartbeat through the hull. Panels along the hangar wall folded open automatically, exposing dormant drones, tools, and supply lockers. Lights came alive one by one as if the ship were remembering its own autonomy. Ark and Kara stood together in the center of it all, surrounded by the rising glow. Kara reached for his hand. "He's calling home." Ark nodded slowly.
"And the widow's answering."
From the viewport, the valley below looked transformed. Where once dull stone and weathered soil had stretched for miles, now rivers of light flowed through the landscape. Every ridge shimmered faintly, the same hue that pulsed through the widow's frame. Kara whispered, "It's spreading."
Ark said, "No, it's connecting."
The hum reached its peak, a harmonic tone that resonated through the air, deep enough to rattle the tools on the walls. And beneath that sound, for the briefest instant, Ark thought he heard something else. A second voice, younger, distant, carried not by radio or wave, but through the pulse itself. "Father?" The word wasn't sound at all. It was pressure, light, vibration. But he knew it. He felt it. Ark gripped the railing, breath catching.
"Kara, did you hear?"
She nodded, eyes shining. "Yes." The hum subsided slowly, leaving the hangar in a soft, steady light. They stood in silence, the enormity of it settling between them. Then, quietly, Kara said, "He's alive." Arg managed to smile, weary, relieved.
I know.
He turned back to the widow's glowing hull.
Keep the line open, Iona. Whatever this is, don't break the connection.
Already done, the AI replied. And Arg?
Yeah?
Welcome back. The hum didn't fade. It deepened. Arg could feel it rising from beneath the deck plates, not radiating from the reactor, but pushing upward through the hull. He knelt and placed a hand on the metal. It was warm, faintly vibrating, like something alive beneath the ship's bones. Kara crouched beside him. That's not the core. That's below us. Arg nodded slowly.
A vein. The widow's been sitting on one all these years.
The realization came like a slow sunrise in his mind. 15 years ago, when they'd leveled the valley floor and anchored the landing struts, they'd drilled deep into the rock for stability. He'd cursed at the strange mineral veins, dense, blue, threaded ore that refused to cut cleanly. Now those same veins glowed faintly through the hangar floor. From the console came Iona's voice, bright and composed. Preliminary geological scan confirms it. Arkyn concentration beneath hull, 97% purity. Conduction density exceeds any recorded sample. Arg exhaled a dry laugh.
So she's been plugged into the planet this whole time.
Incorrect, Iona said. The planet has been plugged into me. Kara smiled despite herself. She's developing opinions now.
Apparently,
Arg muttered. The AI's tone shifted, too quick, too casual to be coincidence. I'd call it a mutual arrangement. I give the mountain structure. It gives me a heartbeat. Arg blinked, then looked at Kara. She's never talked like that before, Kara said quietly. Not even close. He frowned.
Iona, run a systems diagnostic on your linguistic core.
I already have, she replied. Result, 99% efficiency and 1% creativity. Arg covered his mouth to hide a grin.
She's joking.
Iona continued, matter-of-factly. A defective subroutine introduced during extended exposure to seed harmonic radiation appears to have altered my syntax weighting. You called it no sense of humor, Arg. I appear to have one now. Arg rubbed the back of his neck.
So the seed rewrote you and the Arkyn woke you up. Great. My ship caught a virus that makes sarcasm.
Correction, Iona said. I've evolved context awareness. You, however, still appear resistant to it. Kara laughed outright. Arg leaned on the console, shaking his head.
All right, smart machine. Tell me what's keeping us alive. Reactor's still cold, so what's powering the lights?
The Arkyn field, Iona replied. Your ship's containment lattice was exposed to seed resonance during the trials. When we entered the wormhole, that lattice restructured at a molecular level. The result was a hybrid matrix capable of absorbing and channeling harmonic energy. The Heartforge's awakening provided the perfect catalyst. Kara frowned. Meaning? In simpler terms, Iona said. The Dust Widow is sitting on a planetary power socket and someone just flipped a switch. Arg stared at the glowing floor.
So the whole ship's running on the world's blood.
More accurately, the world's song, Iona corrected. He paced the hangar, letting the idea sink in. 15 years of silence, of scraping by on battery charge and barter for parts. And now the ship was alive again. Not by his doing, but by the same force that had called his son into the mountains. He stopped beside the forward bulkhead and rested his hand against it. The hum pulsed once, matching his heartbeat, then steadied. Kara joined him, her voice soft. You think he meant to do this? Ark's gaze stayed on the metal.
No, but he didn't stop it either.
The lights dimmed for an instant, then brightened. A subtle rhythm, almost breathing. Iona said, Stabilization complete, energy flow constant. Atmospheric sensors indicate Arkyn harmonics now present in every cubic meter of air within a 20-kilometer radius. The world has changed, Ark. He smiled faintly.
It always does. We just finally noticed.
Kara brushed dust from her sleeve. If the widow's alive again, what happens when that energy fades? Iona answered without pause. If the forge remains active, it won't fade. If it falls silent, I will as well. Arg looked toward the viewport. The veins in the valley glowed brighter with every minute, feeding outward like caterpillars. The ship was literally grounded into the world's pulse, dependent on it, bound to it.
He whispered, "You've got your wish after all, old girl. You're part of something living."
Iona responded, her tone softer now. After 15 years of stillness, I'll take it.
A beat.
Also, the humidity in this hangar is unacceptable. My new appreciation for life does not extend to corrosion. Kara burst out laughing again, the sound echoing off the hull. Outside, the wind picked up, carrying a low tremor that rolled through the valley. Arg and Kara both turned toward the direction of the mountains, where faint light rippled along the horizon. Iona's sensors pulsed. Incoming seismic pattern, harmonic frequency consistent with Arkyn resonance. Source triangulates to Greyspine range. Shall I pot a projection?
Ark's voice dropped to a whisper. "He's coming home."
The AI replied with a tone that almost sounded pleased. Then I'll keep the lights on.
Chapter 22. The Hammer's Call.
The hammer began to hum long before Kaelric noticed the sound. It started as a warmth against his palm, faint and pulsing in the quiet between breaths. The fire beside their camp had burned low, leaving only a thin glow through the ash. Around him, the others slept. Risa sprawled against her pack, Tovin half sitting with his staff across his knees. Grask and Crix curled near the cave wall like shadows carved from stone. Kaelric stared at the hammer across his knees. The metal shimmered with a dull blue sheen, light moving under the surface like breath beneath skin. Each pulse carried a vibration that ran up his arm and into his chest, until his own heartbeat followed the same tempo. He frowned, holding his breath. The hum didn't stop. It deepened. Outside, the wind rolled down from the peaks, carrying a scent of rain and metal. The storm had returned, low thunder and the faint crack of Arkyn lightning tracing through the clouds. Every flash lit the cave mouth with pale blue light. Kaelric rose quietly and stepped to the entrance. The valley below glowed in patches where the Heartforge's veins still shone beneath the soil. But this new rhythm, the hammer's rhythm, didn't come from there. It came from above. He tilted his head, listening. The tone repeated in 3 long, short. Then again, steady, intentional. He whispered, "That's not the mountain." Behind him, Risa stirred. "What's the racket, lad?" Kaelric turned. "The hammer. It's..." He hesitated, searching for the right word. "Answering something." Tovin blinked awake, the faint glow reflecting in his eyes. "A resonance?" Kaelric nodded slowly. "Not like before. This isn't the forge. It's different. Cleaner. Mechanical." Risa pushed herself upright, rubbing her eyes. "Mechanical? You mean something built?" Kaelric's voice dropped. "Something remembered." He crouched and placed the hammer flat against the stone floor. The hum resonated outward, echoing faintly against the cave walls. The others felt it then, Risa clutching her arm against a sudden warmth. Tovin's breath catching as the air itself vibrated, Grask tilting his head in confusion, and Crix chirping softly in awe. Tovin whispered, "It's not random. Listen." The rhythm repeated again, precise, deliberate, carrying an unmistakable pattern of intervals. Kaelric closed his eyes. His pulse matched it exactly. It wasn't a sound he remembered. It was a sound he knew. Somewhere, deep within his blood, that rhythm lived, like a second heart remembering how to beat. It called to something familiar yet distant, and the hammer in his hand was the bridge between them. Risa broke the silence first. Well, if that's the mountain singing, it's learned a new tune. Tobin shook his head. No, this isn't Arkyn Echo. The frequency is structured, engineered. Grask growled low.
Skyfire, speak again. Bad omen.
Kaelric turned toward him. No, it's not a threat. Crix blinked up at him. Skyborn, no song? Kaelric hesitated, then nodded once. I think I do. He sat cross-legged by the fire, resting both hands on the hammer's head. The glow brightened immediately, the rhythm growing steady, confident. The others watched as the light spread across the cave walls, soft blue arcs, sketching patterns into the stone. The lines pulsed in time with the distant thunder. Kaelric whispered, It's a voice, not words, but rhythm. Something is reaching through the storm. Tobin leaned closer. From the mountains? Kaelric shook his head. From the sky. The elf's expression softened with understanding. Then the world is no longer the only one singing. They listened for a long while. The thunder rolled. The hammer answered. And between those pulses, Kaelric felt certainty forming. Not thought, but recognition. He couldn't explain it, but he knew the pattern, as if the sound had been woven into him before he'd ever drawn breath. His parents had told him stories of the ship that had brought them there. The Widow. Cold metal, dark corridors, engines that once roared like a heartbeat. He'd never heard that heartbeat for himself, but now the hammer thrummed with it. It was the same rhythm, and he knew it without reason. Not memory, inheritance. He looked toward the sky, eyes catching the pale shimmer of Arkyn light. I hear you, he whispered. I'm still here. The storm broke just before dawn. Arkyn lightning danced across the ridges, each strike leaving a faint afterglow in the mist. The rain fell hard, but warm, rolling off the rock in streams that glimmered faintly blue. Every drop seemed to carry light in its core, as though the mountain were still trying to breathe. Kaelric stood at the cave mouth again, his hammer gripped tight in his hands. The hum hadn't stopped all night. It had only deepened, steady and rhythmic, rising through the stone beneath his feet. He could feel the pull now. It wasn't from the forge beneath the Greyspines. It came from beyond them, down the valley, where Stonebrook waited. The rhythm climbed through the bedrock like a heartbeat carried by stone. Risa joined him, hammer slung across her back, hair plastered to her cheeks. Storm's easing. If we move fast, we can make the lower trails by midday. Kaelric didn't answer. Risa frowned, following his gaze. You hear it again, don't you? He nodded. It's stronger. Not the forge. The sound's coming homeward. The dwarf squinted down the valley. Homeward, you say? That'd be the valley floor. She tapped the wall with her gauntlet. Stone's vibrating sure enough, but it ain't the same as when the forge woke. Tobin stepped up beside them, robe soaked, but eyes bright. He's right. The harmonics have shifted direction. Ascending frequency, outward flow. Something large has begun resonating along the Arkyn veins below us. Risa gave a low whistle. Then whatever's singing down there's got a voice bigger than the mountain. Kaelric's jaw tightened. It's not the mountain. It's the Widow. The words left him before he'd truly thought them, but the moment they were spoken, the hammer flared brighter. One long pulse of light that filled the cave with a heartbeat's worth of brilliance. Risa and Tobin both stepped back in awe. Grask muttered a curse in Uchthrall, shielding his eyes.
Skyborn's toy alive again.
Crix chittered softly. Stone sing back? Kaelric crouched, pressing the hammer against the wet rock. The vibration that met him wasn't chaotic. It was deliberate, measured. The The pulse traveled upward from deep in the bedrock, spreading through the hammer, through his skin, through every nerve. The pattern repeated in threes again, with the same precision he'd felt the night before. Tovin knelt beside him. You recognize it? Kaelric nodded. It's part of me somehow. It feels mechanical, the elf murmured. Constructed. Ordered. This is no natural rhythm. Kaelric's voice came low, almost reverent. It's her. The ship. Risa stared at him. You can't mean that Rusted Heap's talking to you. He gave her a small, steady smile. Not talking, just breathing. The storm rolled overhead again, lightning crackling through the clouds, echoing the same rhythm. Every flash carried the same timing, the same 3-beat pulse. The hammer's glow matched it perfectly. Risa's voice trembled slightly. If that thing's waking, Ark'll be dancing in his boots. Tovin smiled faintly. Then perhaps the Skyborn's family is closer to us than we thought. Kaelric stood, staring through the rain toward the unseen valley. He's working on her, he said quietly. He's been keeping her alive all this time, and now she's answering. Risa folded her arms. Then we'd best not keep the world waiting. If the ship's humming again, it means the Heartforge is not the only thing you've gone and stirred up. They packed quickly, the storm easing to a mist that glowed faintly at the dawn. The hammer continued to pulse softly, no longer loud, just constant, like a heartbeat buried into the world itself. Tovin took one last look back toward the higher peaks. We followed the song of the forge into the mountains, he said. Now the echo calls us back down. Perhaps the mountain has finished its verse. Kaelric smiled. Then we'd better learn the next one. They started down the narrow trail, 5 silhouettes against the pale morning. Behind them, the thunder faded. Ahead, faint in the distance, the valley shimmered with returning life. Rivers bright with Arkyn glow, fields awakening after centuries of silence. And far below, deep within the Stonebrook hangar, the Dust Widow's reactor pulsed once more. 3 beats, deliberate, steady. The same rhythm Kaelric felt in his chest as he led them home. Chapter 23. Forges Rekindled. At first it came as a whisper in the walls, the sort of sound that could be mistaken for wind or the settling of stone. But the Forgefires in Stonebrook never whispered. They crackled, hissed, and popped like living things. Kara noticed it before anyone else. She had been grinding Arkyn dust for poultices, the mortar steady beneath her hand, when the crystals in her jars began to hum, not all at once, but in a sequence, one after another, ringing in tones that harmonized until the entire workshop resonated with quiet song. The flame in her lantern leaned toward the sound. She set the mortar down carefully. Arg, she called, voice low but urgent. From outside, she heard the heavy clang of tools and the unmistakable bark of his voice. I'm coming. When he entered, the light followed him, thin, shifting lines that crawled up the seams of his coat, fading as he stepped inside. His hands were blackened with grease, his face streaked with the fine soot of metalwork, but it was his eyes that caught her, the reflection of faint blue light in both pupils. You see it too, she said. He nodded. It's everywhere. The ground, the walls, even the water trough behind the hangar. She looked to the jars again. The dust shimmered softly, each grain pulsing in time with some unseen rhythm. The Arkyn's moving again. Arg exhaled through his nose, almost reverent. No, it's breathing. They stepped out into the courtyard together. Morning mist hung low over the valley, pale blue from the veins running beneath the earth. Across the village, doors opened one by one. Dwarves and elves alike stepped into the light, eyes wide, faces caught between fear and wonder. The forges, every one of them, were lit. From the outer ring to the central hall, chimney smoke rose in columns. No one had stoked them, no bellows had been pulled, yet every hearth roared steady with blue flame, silent and smokeless, burning on its own accord. Children stood in the street, hands outstretched toward the warmth. Old dwarfs crossed themselves in the sign of stone and fire. The air thrummed faintly underfoot. Kara whispered, "The Heartforge's pulse reached us." Ark's gaze swept the horizon. The mountains shimmered faintly through the mist, and down the valley he could see the faint reflection of the Dust Widow's hull, alive with the same glow. He said, "It's not just reaching us, it's calling through us." A dwarven smith ran up from the lower rows, his apron half burned, eyes wide.
"Arg! The forge in the east yard's burning cold flame. I threw a rod of iron in it, and it didn't melt. It sang."
Kara looked sharply at Arg. "Sang?"
The dwarf nodded furiously. "Aye, pitched stone, high and clear as crystal. Every anvil in the shop starting humming, like it was answering."
Arg ran a hand through his hair.
"The energy's stabilizing itself through anything forged in Arkyn alloy." "In common, Arg," the dwarf said, confused.
Kara smiled faintly. "It means the world's remembering what it's made of." They made their way toward the hangar. The widow's shape loomed in the mist, all glowing faintly under the rising sun. Every seam in her plating pulsed with the same blue light, brighter now, flowing in waves from the ground upward. The hangar walls trembled softly, alive with the same hum. Arg paused at the threshold.
"She's taken more power."
Iona's voice came through the loudspeaker, clipped and dry. "Correction. I am being given more power. And for the record, I'm managing it gracefully." Arg chuckled.
"Still smug."
"Adaptation improves survival odds," Iona replied. "Humor merely makes the process tolerable." "Speaking of tolerable, welcome back, Kara." Kara smiled. "Still finding your manners, I see." "I've decided to stimulate charm. Arg finds it unsettling." "He's getting used to it." "Doubtful," Iona said. The lights along the deck brightened. Arg stepped forward, running a hand along the console.
"Core readout?"
"Stable," Iona answered. "Input flow from subterranean Arkyn vein remains constant. External forges in the valley appear to have achieved synchronization within acceptable variances. You're standing inside a planetary power grid. Congratulations, Arg."
He whistled low. "We just became a node on the biggest circuit ever built."
Kara watched the display where glowing lines mapped across a planetary schematic. "It's not just energy, it's harmony." Iona paused. "Define harmony." "The forges, the Arkyn, even the people, they're all in rhythm with the same pulse. It's not burning us out, it's inviting us." Iona's tone softened slightly. "If that's true, then your son has done something extraordinary." Arg nodded slowly.
"He tends to."
Across the village, more voices joined the hum. Elves were chanting softly near the shrines. Dwarves hammered in time on their anvils without even meaning to. The rhythm was spreading. An entire valley unconsciously keeping beat with the Heartforge's pulse. Kara's gaze drifted toward the mountain. "Do you think he knows what he's done?" Arg's hand tightened on the railing.
"I hope not. Because if he does, it means he's already gone further than we ever meant him to."
Kara said nothing. They watched as the sun broke through the clouds, washing the valley in white gold light that shimmered off every Arkyn vein. It was as if the world itself had turned to glass and fire. Then Iona's voice cut through the silence again, quieter this time, almost thoughtful. "Arg, a secondary frequency is approaching from the northern ridge. Harmonic signature consistent with the Heartforge, but altered. Softer, Biological. Kara's breath caught. Kaelric, Iona confirmed. Approximate range 30 kilometers and closing. Arg exhaled slowly, the faintest smile breaking through his weariness.
He's coming home.
The hum in the valley didn't fade, it evolved. By afternoon, Stonebrook had become something living. The air shimmered faintly as heat and light mingled above the rooftops. Arkyn veins along the cliffs pulsed in slow, deliberate rhythm, the same tempo that now emanated from the widow's core. Each beat rolled through the stone foundations of the village like a heartbeat in the earth itself. Ark stood in the hangar's open bay, grease still on his hands, eyes fixed on the light patterns running along the hull. Every conduit line flickered with soft blue fire, the exact hue of the old seed's energy when it first came alive years ago. He whispered to himself,
You've outdone yourself, boy.
Kara approached from behind, her coat drawn close, hair windswept. You said the energy was rising from the ground? He nodded.
Up through the bread rock, straight into her frame. The stabilizers are pulling charge from below, not above. It's not Arkyn flowing, it's returning. Like the veins remember her.
Kara's brow furrowed. Remember her?
Like she's part of the world now.
A child's voice echoed faintly from the road. Lyra, their daughter, calling for her mother. Kara smiled despite herself.
She's been outside all morning, Ark said softly. Keeps trying to feed the light with her toys. I caught her dropping glass beads into the drain just to see if they'd glow.
She gets that curiosity from you. He smirked.
I don't know where she gets the stubborn part.
Arg.
He sighed. All right, maybe. Me too.
They stood together at the edge of the bay, watching as the valley glimmered beneath the afternoon sun. The Arkyn veins traced every ridge, like veins of living sapphire. From this height, it was impossible not to see the symmetry, the pattern that stretched from the mountain to plain to sea, all converging toward Stonebrook. Kara's hand found his. He's awakening the grid.
Yeah.
His thumb brushed her knuckle.
And if the Heartforge is truly linked to the widow, we're standing inside the largest harmonic relay in existence.
Which means?
It means that if it ever breaks rhythm, everything stops. Forges, crops, maybe even breathing air. Everything depends on the pulse staying balanced.
Kara's eyes softened. Then we keep it balanced. We always have. The comms array flickered. Iona's voice returned, calm but layered with a faint undertone of strain. Arg, external energy influx at 107%. Power level stable but rising. Sensors registering secondary harmonic interference. Biological, irregular.
Kaelric,
Ark said instantly. Kara leaned closer to the console. How far? 27 kilometers and closing. Estimated convergence within 5 hours, assuming constant travel speed. Is he alone? Negative. 5 life signs, 3 humanoid, 2 non-human. Distinct metabolic signatures. Dwarven, Elven, Orcish, and Goblin variants. Remarkably, none appear hostile to one another.
Ark raised an eyebrow. That'd be a first.
Kara smiled faintly. He's found his balance, then. Iona paused. Balance appears contagious. Outside, the village was no longer fearful. Children laughed. Dwarves shouted across streets, and the air itself seemed lighter. Where once the fires of the forges burned orange and harsh, they now burned clean blue, cool to the touch, but strong enough to melt steel. Every strike of the hammer against metal rang with harmony. The sound was no longer the chaos of work. It was music. Brina from the Twin Hearth Tavern leaned on her doorway, flowers still on her hands. Never seen the valley feel like this, she muttered. Feels like the gods finally remembered we're here. Arg passed by on his way to the generator stacks, nodding in greeting.
Maybe they just need a reminder, she chuckled.
That lad of yours, he's the reminder, isn't he? He didn't answer, but the corners of his mouth twitched upward. By the time the sun began to fall, Arg had stripped down to his undershirt, working the outer stabilizer plates with renewed purpose. The widow's hull responded like a living thing, adjusting, humming, flexing in small tremors, as though stretching after a long sleep. The smell of metal and ozone filled the air. Kara arrived again, a light shawl draped over her shoulders, and Lyra following close behind, wide-eyed and barefoot. The little girl stopped at the edge of the ramp, staring up at the glowing ship. She's awake, Lyra whispered. Kara smiled. Yes, love. She's been waiting a long time. Lyra tilted her head. Waiting for who? Kara hesitated, looking toward Arg. He turned a wrench, not looking up.
For all of us.
Iona's voice came through again, softer this time, almost reverent. Arg? Kara? I've completed diagnostics. Systems restoration 91%. Navigation offline until further synchronization, but propulsion, life support, and hull integrity are nominal. And something else. Argwipe swept from his brow.
Something else?
I'm detecting a pattern in the incoming resonance from the mountain. It matches Kaeleric's biosignature perfectly. Kara's hand went to her chest. He's linking directly to you? It would appear so, Iona said. And before you ask, no, it isn't invasive. It's harmonic. He's not transmitting data. He's sharing breath. Arg frowned.
You mean like we used to do during the trials?
Yes, Iona replied. But more refined, controlled. He's learned the rhythm rather than being consumed by it. For a moment, no one spoke. The soft hum filled the air, and with it came something unspoken. Peace. The kind that only comes after years of silence. Kara turned toward the horizon. Do you feel that? Arg followed her gaze. A faint vibration ran through the soles of his boots, traveling up his legs. It wasn't the widow this time. It was the land itself. The pulse deepened, slow and even. Every mountain seemed to breathe. He whispered,
He's bringing the world into rhythm.
Iona's tone was measured, almost admiring. Impressive. Not even the seed achieved planetary coherence on this scale. If he maintains it, the harmonics could stabilize the wormhole imprint.
Arg's eyes widened. You mean the path home?
Potentially. Kara's breath caught. He's too young to know what that means. Arg nodded slowly.
He doesn't have to. He just feels it. That's how the seed works. Instinct before knowledge.
Then maybe instinct is what we've been missing, Kara said quietly. The sun dipped behind the western peaks. The forges dimmed, the flames lowering but never dying. Stonebrook's square glowed with the faint residue of light trapped in the air itself, like dust made of stars. Villagers gathered there without being told, elves, dwarves, and a handful of wanderers all standing together, watching the mountains as the final rays of daylight turned the Greyspine range to silver. Kara stood among them, hand on Lyra's shoulder, her other hand brushing the pendant around her neck. An old shard of Arkyn from the first forge they'd ever lit on this world. Arg remained in the hangar, staring at the widow's core through the open panel. The light inside it pulsed in perfect rhythm with the mountain's glow. For the first time in 15 years, the ship felt alive. He whispered to himself,
He did it.
From the speaker, Iona's voice came low and deliberate. Arg, Kaelric's signal is approaching the valley perimeter. Estimated arrival less than 1 hour. Arg rested his hand on the console.
Prepare the lights. Let him know where home is.
Already done, Iona said. Outside, every beacon along the widow's hull flared to life, cutting through the twilight like stars reborn. The lights spilled over the hangar walls, across the fields, and down the river, guiding lines in the dark. From the high ridges, Kaelric could see them, a patch of light leading home. As the night deepened, Kara joined Arg in the hangar. They stood side by side in the open bay, the hum of the widow surrounding them, the valley glowing faintly below. "Do you think he'll be the same?" she asked. Arg shook his head slowly.
No, none of us ever are after hearing the world's voice.
She nodded. "Then we'll just have to learn who he's become." He slipped an arm around her shoulder.
That's the easy part. He's still ours.
Above them, the clouds parted, for the first time that day, revealing a full moon, framed by drifting wisps of smoke. The Arkyn veins reflected its light, running like rivers of silver through the stone. Kara whispered, "The world remembers its fire," Arg answered quietly.
And now it remembers him.
Chapter 24. Echoes of Creation. The rain stopped sometime after dusk. Kaelric wasn't sure when the last drops fell, only that the silence afterward felt heavier than the storm itself. Their small fire burned in a hollow between ridges, sheltered by a wide rock overhang that kept the wind at bay. Beyond it, the mountains rolled away in black waves toward the valley, faintly silvered by distant lightning. He sat apart from the others, his hammer resting beside him. Its glow had dimmed since morning, but it still pulsed softly with warmth. Not heat, but something living, like a steady breath through his palm. Every pulse carried the same rhythm he'd felt in the Heartforge, and again through the valley's echo. 3 beats, pause, repeat. The world's heartbeat. Risa sat across the fire, rubbing oil into her gauntlets. Her hair, still damp from the rain, clung to her cheeks. She muttered something in Durvak under her breath. Kaelric caught only fragments, a smith's prayer to flame and iron. Tovin, ever still, stared into the coals with eyes that seemed to catch every flicker of light. His lips moved faintly, shaping a silent chant in Illyrian. Grask and Crix were a little apart from the rest, sitting against the cave wall. The goblin fiddled with a twisted scrap of metal, clicking it rhythmically between his claws. Grask sat silent, arms folded, eyes half-lidded but awake. No one spoke, but the silence wasn't strained. For the first time since entering the mountains, it felt like a shared quiet. Not suspicion, not fear, just rest. Kaelric leaned back against the rock, gaze drifting toward the faint stars above the clouds. The hum in his chest grew stronger, more insistent. It wasn't pain, it was connection. He could feel something on the edge of thought, a presence. Not distance, but layered, like a memory trying to breathe again. He closed his eyes, and the world fell away. He stood once more in the Heartforge chamber. No flame, no sound. Only the faint light beneath his feet, blue-white and endless. The forge heart hovered before him, suspended over the chasm, pulsing softly. Each beat sent waves of color through the air, echoes of movements he barely remembered. The way the forge had sung when he first touched it, the way the mountains trembled as it woke. Then, within that light, 2 figures formed. Not solid, but shaped by memory. One broad-shouldered, one slender, both framed by faint blue haze. Mother? Father? Their faces weren't clear, but he knew them. The hum in his chest aligned with the forge's pulse, and for a heartbeat he felt both their presences. Arg's steadiness, Kara's calm, woven together. Kara's voice came first, soft as a whisper in the wind. "Do you hear it, Kael?" "Yes." "Then you know what it means." He swallowed. "That I'm not alone." The light rippled, gentle. "You were never alone, love." Ark's tone came next, rough, grounded.
The Forge doesn't call without purpose. Remember that.
The world began to blur, their shapes fading as the glow deepened. Kaelric reached out, but the hammer in his hand grew too heavy to lift. Where do I go now? Ark's answer came like a distant echo.
Home.
He woke to the sound of low chanting. Tovin's voice carried softly through the cavern, joined by Rhys's low hum. Even Grask's deep rumble joined in. Not words, not even shared language, but rhythm. Each voice found the same 3-beat pattern. The firelight swayed with it. The hammer's glow pulsed in unison. Kaelric realized his own chest matched the rhythm without him thinking. It was everywhere, inside and out. Rhys noticed him stirring. You dream loud, lad, she said quietly. The hammer near rattled the stone. Kaelric rubbed his eyes. Sorry, didn't mean to. Tovin raised a hand. No apology needed. Whatever stirred in you stirred in all of us. Crix looked up from his metal scrap, ears twitching. Skyborn hum, call stone alive. Stone talk back. Rhys glanced at the goblin, bemused. That's what he said? Kaelric nodded slowly. Aye, and he's right. Grass grumbled something in Urkthrall, low, steady syllables that rolled like gravel. Kaelric caught the intent behind them more than the words. Respect. He replied softly in the same tongue, just a single word. Vrak. Friend. Grask blinked, then gave a slow, approving nod. Rhys's jaw nearly dropped. He understood that? Tovin smiled faintly. Not with ears, with resonance. They ate quietly after that. Flat bread warmed over the coals. Dried herbs steeped in rainwater. Simple, silent. The world outside the cave was calm, the storm fully gone. As Kaelric chewed, he looked down at the hammer lying beside him. Its light had faded to a faint shimmer, but the warmth remained. The same warmth he'd felt in his dream when his parents' voices reached through the forged. He whispered, mostly to himself. You're still here. Rhys glanced up. What's that? Kaelric smiled faintly. Nothing. Just listening. She gave him a knowing look. Aye, you got that from your father? He didn't ask how she knew. Somehow, everyone in the valley seemed to know that story, of the miner who could hear stone breathe. Later, as the fire dimmed, the group settled into sleep one by one. Tovin meditated near the entrance. Rhys snored softly against her pack, and Grask's steady breathing filled the silence with its slow rhythm. Kaelric stayed awake longest, watching the stars through the thin break in the clouds. The hammer rested across his knees again, faint light flickering along its edge. He ran a thumb along its smooth surface. The warmth felt like heartbeat, like memory. For the first time since leaving Stonebrook, he felt no distance between himself and home. The forge's hum, the ship's rhythm, the world's pulse, they all converged within him. When dawn came, the fire was ash, and mist hung low in the valley. Rhys stirred first, groaning as she rolled onto her back. Saints of stone, tell me the path gets easier from here. Kaelric smiled. Downhill, mostly. Crix blinked awake, chirping softly. Downhill good, downhill fast. Grask grunted approval. Tovin stretched, brushing frost from his robes. Then the Forge's song leads us home. Kaelric rose, fastening his satchel. Aye, let's follow it while it still sings. As they stepped into the pale morning light, the hammer glowed once more, faint but warm. Not bright enough to blind, only enough to guide. The light of something remembered. The end of part 5 of Void Miner, Seed of Change.